Matthew, we start with the Cats, the extraordinary paradox that is Chris Scott's coaching record, the most successful home and away coach over 100 games in history, and the week one curse of the finals continues.
Yeah, under a lot of pressure is Chris and his team at Geelong, and I think nothing but a premiership, Caro, after last year and finishing so well this year in the top four again will be good enough for Geelong and Chris Scott. They're all in. They've recruited that way, and I know we always talk about it every year with Geelong, but look at that, 72% win-loss, the best of all the current coaches. But when it comes to finals, he drops to 39%. So the questions will be asked, is it a game style that can get you through home and away games? But when it comes to finals, the fast ball movement of Melbourne, the fast ball movement of Port Adelaide gets you through. So I think they win this week, but they'll then come up against Melbourne in a big prelim where I think Melbourne are a fair way ahead of them at the moment.
I think that's a question Geelong are asking themselves internally. Yep. They asked it last year. And Kane, I reckon they're asking it again at the moment. And I know Craig's been very much of the view that this was a chips in for a premiership year for the Geelong Football Club. But I guess the interesting thing is if they don't get to the grand final this year, what happens to Chris Scott and what happens to that Geelong list?
What do you think, Hutchie? What will Chris Scott's legacy be if they got to win it this year, as Lordo's alluded to after being so close? Where to after this year for Chris Scott if they don't win the grand final?
Well, I agree with Lordo that they'll win this week, so it takes a little bit of pressure off. But if they were to lose this week, it does bring into question whether other clubs will come and try and prize him clear of the category. I can't imagine, Kane and Matthew, that he stays and rebuilds this team. They have squeezed the life out of the older end of the list, and the rebuild, when it does come, be it this year or next, is going to be a significant job, and probably for someone with fresh energy for 5, 6, 7 years. So it does open the door, I think, if they lose this weekend, for clubs to go and ask the question. Caro will talk about Brian Cook and a potential Carlton link soon as well. I can't imagine, Matthew, that he hangs around if they don't win this week. I can't imagine that he wants to be there for the next 10 years and rebuild the team. I do think they'll win, though. It's a redundant conversation. What's your take, Lotto?
So I'm interested in that, actually. I wouldn't have thought of that Chris Scott, obviously there's so much to play for in the next 3 weeks, and they've been poor before and still got to grand finals. But so what are you saying here, Hutch? If he doesn't make a grand final, he'd be open potentially for a Gold Coast or a Carlton to come looking and hunting him?
No, I think it'll invite interest from others this weekend if they don't win. They should and will win, you would think, against the Giants, who are depleted with the 2 greens to miss. But the prospect of a straight sets loss will encourage other clubs. He's an elite coach, Chris Scott. He's done an elite job with the team, 72% as you mentioned. And I think it's hard to imagine him being there for the next 4, 5 or 6 years. He's told us repeatedly that he doesn't see himself as a long-term coach. And I think that's enough of an invitation for the vacant jobs, Carlton in particular, and potentially the Gold Coast Suns, to ask the question post this final series.
How would you look upon that, Lordo, if he left now? I mean, clearly there's no real upside to their list, as we've seen the graphic. How would you view Chris Scott if he did leave and then it really did fall away for Geelong after this year?
I'd say that he's leaving them in a poor state, the list, when he's gone all in. But I'd also wonder what Geelong feels. They may feel that, if we have to go back down to the bottom again, is it time to start afresh with a new young coach as well? So, you can grow tired of each other at times. It's been a long time, but everyone will be saying, how premature are these guys going? But I think they're decisions that will have to be discussed at Geelong, Kane, over the next week or two.
I've been interested in his language all year, and it's not the first time we've raised this on this program, but let's take a listen back and a look back to what has come out of Chris Scott and the Geelong camp so far this year.
The environment we're in at the moment is unsustainable. And even more than that, it's not right. Every team should get 11 home games, and they should get the opportunity to play them wherever they choose. I mean, when I watch footy Thursday, Friday night, the game's way too long. I'm a huge advocate for the game being shorter. It flies in the face of the way world sport's going. I haven't heard a good argument for, and this is completely driven by self-interest, so let me put that on the table, but maybe you guys could enlighten me. What's the argument for not having the bye?
His career as a coach is over, but it doesn't need to be. Would you like to see him do it?
No.
No. Why?
I wouldn't. Because it's not a very good job.
to be honest.
It's been whinge bingo, hasn't it, all year? And I just get the feeling that he's a bit under pressure, he's a bit disgruntled, as you can hear that, and it's impossible for that not to filter through your players. So that 10-year barrier, when you haven't had the ultimate after being so close, maybe that's just starting to rub off. And I don't know, I rate him highly. I think he's highly intelligent and intellectual, but I think if he'd had his time again, one thing, he could have been more positive and it would have sent a better message to his group this year.
Well, he has to be bold at selection, I think, this week and make some calls. Does he try and bring some youth into it, Hutch? And we look at this, obviously Gary Rowan is one player that his final record, it can't be overlooked, Hutch. Do you think he would make that bold call? He's not the only one. Lockie Henderson we'll get to shortly, Hutchie, but do you think he'll make some changes? Radigalia, Jordan Clark, Zach Tui, what do you think they'll do?
Radigalia will definitely play, so it's a matter of whether it's Rowan or one of the smalls like Dalehouse, but you would think Radigalia plays, and Connor Fatui looks like the natural mix. They've got some issues too with Paddy Dangerfield. It's reported today on AFL.com that he's got a serious finger injury. You've had an injury like this in your career, Matthew, but it affected him on the weekend, and they'll be very concerned to get him up and going for the weekend.
Yeah, it is I'll just ask the question. I thought personally, I didn't know about his injury watching the game, and I asked myself, Caro, whether does Patrick put too much pressure on himself at times? Does he feel he has to put the Superman cape on and carry his team over the line when at finals time, I think your bottom end hurts you at times, but Geelong have amazingly, he wasn't the only one. They're saying his hand's an issue and he was fumbly, he was dropping marks. I'd just love for him to relax this week and just go, I'll just play my role, and hopefully the rest of the team plays their role and we can win a game.
He seems to absorb pressure better than any other player in terms of everything going on around him. And generally, he did seem more wound up, didn't he? But maybe he had to because of what was... And this, by contrast, Matthew, of course, was Melbourne the following night with Max Gawn high-fiving everyone as they ran onto the ground, having a fantastic time. I love these shots. Yeah. I just want to finish off, though, quickly on Chris Scott. He does have a year to go on his contract. Geelong is horrified by suggestions he would be going anywhere, but they are aware that Craig Kelly and the Collingwood Football Club certainly had unofficial conversations earlier this year around the time of Nathan Buckley's departure. So his name was there. I've always talked about Brad Scott and the Gold Coast, but I just wonder too whether someone does make a big play for Chris. Who knows?